With the infrastructure of roads and buildings, the ecosystem of the Everglades is in danger.
Deep in Florida's swamps, something impossible is happening. For decades, Burmese pythons have devastated the Everglades, turning a subtropical paradise into a silent graveyard. We've all heard about the invasion, the massive snakes, the vanishing wildlife, the failed attempts to stop them. But recent discoveries reveal a hidden consequence nobody saw coming. What's unfolding in the Everglades isn't just an ecological disaster. It's a three-way war between an ancient predator, an invisible plague, and a desperate gamble that the entire world mocked. This is the story of how paradise fell, and how it might be fighting its way back. Paradise lost. Before the chaos began, the Florida Everglades was one of Earth's greatest natural wonders. This wasn't just another swamp. It was a vast, slow-moving river of grass stretching across 1.5 million acres of subtropical wilderness. The ecosystem's value was estimated at over $31.5 billion annually, providing flood protection and clean drinking water for millions of South Floridians while harboring an explosion of biodiversity. Life here existed in perfect balance. Massive flocks of wading birds, herons, egrets, and ibis, filled the skies like living clouds. Raccoons, opossums, and marsh rabbits scurried through the sawgrass, while bobcats and native foxes prowled the tree islands called hammocks. It was one of America's last truly wild places, a delicate ecosystem that had thrived for thousands of years. Nobody imagined it could unravel so completely, so fast. The perfect storm. The nightmare began with Hurricane Andrew. In August 1992, this Category 5 monster screamed through southern Florida with winds exceeding 165 mph, flattening entire neighborhoods. In the chaos, it destroyed a reptile breeding facility near Miami, releasing an unknown number of Burmese pythons into the wetlands. These Southeast Asian natives slipped quietly into the Everglades, invisible and unnoticed. But the hurricane was only part of the problem. Throughout the 1980s and 90s, Burmese pythons had become trendy exotic pets. People bought them as cute $10 hatchlings that fit in their hands, never realizing these snakes would become 10-foot, 50-pound monsters within a few years. Some grow beyond 20 feet and 200 pounds, large enough to take down a full-grown deer. Overwhelmed owners did what seemed easiest. They drove to the Everglades and released them. They thought they were setting them free. Instead, they were triggering an ecological time bomb. Here's where the story gets murky. Some researchers whisper about a darker possibility. What if the hurricane didn't just damage a breeding facility, but destroyed a massive, undocumented operation that flooded the swamp with thousands of snakes simultaneously? The sheer speed of the invasion doesn't quite match the scattered pet release narrative. It's a mystery that may never be solved. The silent takeover. For years, nobody noticed. A few python sightings were treated as curiosities. But beneath the surface, these predators were thriving beyond anyone's nightmares. The Everglades offered them paradise, perfect heat and humidity, endless shallow water, and an all-you-can-eat buffet of prey animals that had zero evolutionary defenses against them. The Burmese python is a masterpiece of predatory evolution. They're camouflage experts, disappearing into sawgrass like ghosts. They can hold their breath underwater for over 30 minutes. Most terrifying of all, they possess thermal sensing pits along their jaws that detect body heat in total darkness. A raccoon hunting at night doesn't stand a chance. Then there's their reproduction. A single female can lay up to 100 eggs per clutch. With no natural predators to control them, their population exploded. Today, experts estimate between 100,000 and 300,000 pythons inhabit South Florida. The numbers from a landmark 2012 study sound fake, but they're horrifyingly real. In the hardest hit areas, raccoon populations dropped by 99.3%. Opossums declined 98.9%. Bobcats fell 87.5%, not reduced, virtually erased. Biologists who've worked the Everglades for decades describe an eerie silence. They remember when driving the loop roads meant stopping repeatedly for raccoons or turtles. Now they see nothing for miles, for days. The small mammals that formed the foundation of the entire food web have been vacuumed up. The invaders found heaven and consumed it whole. The unwinnable war. As the crisis became undeniable, Florida launched its counteroffensive. In 2013, they created the Florida Python Challenge, part publicity stunt, part desperate lottery. They invited the public to hunt the invaders for cash prizes, including a 10,000 grand prize for removing the most snakes. It became an annual spectacle. By 2024, over 800 hunters from across North America descended on the swamps. That year, they captured 195 pythons. In 2025, they broke records with 294 snakes. Headlines celebrated the victory, but here's the brutal math. Removing 294 snakes from a population of 100,000 is less than 0.3%. If the real number is closer to 300,000, the impact is statistically zero. It's like emptying the ocean with a teaspoon while the tide rushes in. The state brought in professional contractors. Elite python hunters paid hourly wages to patrol levees and swamps year-round. Since 2017, combined state, federal, and private efforts have removed over 23,000 pythons. It sounds impressive until you realize that's likely less than 5% of the total population. For every snake caught, 20 more hatch hidden in the endless grass. Desperate for solutions, Florida turned to technology. They deployed drones with thermal cameras to spot heat signatures from above. But pythons are cold-blooded masters at matching their body temperature to their surroundings. To a thermal camera, a resting python looks like a warm rock or mud patch. The thick tree canopy made spotting anything nearly impossible. The drones failed. Engineers designed heat-emitting robot rabbits to lure pythons into ambushes. That failed too. Pythons are ambush predators that wait for real prey, not noisy mechanical decoys. The most successful approach used Judas snakes, capturing male pythons, implanting radio transmitters, then releasing them during mating season to lead researchers to breeding females. This has worked, removing some of the biggest egg-producing females, but it's painfully slow and expensive. Some hunters swear the snakes are learning. They avoid traps in areas where hunters patrol. Judas snakes sometimes lead researchers in bizarre circles for months, almost as if they know they're being followed. Could an apex predator with no natural threats evolve heightened cunning? It's a chilling thought. After years of effort and billions spent, scientists began admitting the truth publicly. Full eradication is impossible. The best hope is containment. The pythons had won. But they weren't the only enemy. The invisible plague. The real aftermath takes a darker turn. Florida's biggest threat might not be the 20-foot python everyone's hunting, but something microscopic nobody saw coming. Deep in the swamps, scientists discovered a silent passenger that arrived with the invaders. Rhabdias orientalis, better known as the snake lungworm. During necropsies of native Florida snakes, garter snakes, pygmy rattlesnakes, water snakes, they found emaciated animals struggling to breathe. Opening them up revealed horrors, lungs clogged with dozens, sometimes hundreds of tiny writhing worms. This Asian parasite co-evolved with Burmese pythons over thousands of years. Pythons can carry it with minimal harm. They've developed defenses. But Florida's native snakes have zero natural immunity. It's a completely alien enemy. The life cycle is terrifyingly simple. Infected pythons defecate in the swamp. Eggs in the droppings are consumed by cockroaches and insects. Lizards and frogs eat the infected insects. Native snakes eat the infected frogs. Once inside, larvae tunnel through the stomach wall and migrate directly to the lungs, where they grow, feed on blood and tissue, and reproduce. They clog airways until the snake suffocates. Researchers have found native snakes with severe pneumonia and bleeding lung lesions. In the worst cases, snakes gasp their last breaths, with worms literally crawling from their mouths. This is the second wave of the invasion. The pythons eliminated the mammals. The lungworm is eliminating the native reptiles. At least 18 native snake species across dozens of Florida counties are now infected, with reports reaching as far north as Jacksonville. The parasite is spreading toward the panhandle. Here's the terrifying part. The lungworm no longer needs pythons. It has successfully established itself in native hosts, and now spreads independently from native snake to native snake. Even if every python vanished tomorrow, the lungworm would remain, thriving and spreading. When native snakes collapse, the entire food web destabilizes again. Rodents multiply unchecked. Hawks and eagles that feed on snakes lose their food source. The cascading effects ripple outward. And there's a darker question scientists won't fully answer. Could this parasite jump to mammals or humans? They say it's highly unlikely, but they also said it couldn't jump from Asian pythons to North American garter snakes, and it did. What happens if a dog eats an infected frog? What happens to a hunter handling an infected snake? Right now, they say we're safe, but safe is a strong word when dealing with a rapidly adapting organism. Strangely, the Florida cottonmouth appears highly resistant to the parasite. Nobody knows why. Could its blood hold the secret to a cure? The desperate gamble. With the python crisis spiraling and an invisible plague spreading, Florida announced a plan so outrageous the world erupted in laughter. They would release hundreds more snakes into the wild to fight the invasion. Social media exploded. Doesn't Florida have enough snakes already? Fighting snakes with more snakes, what could go wrong? Critics immediately compared it to history's greatest ecological disasters. The cane toads that devastated Australia, the mongooses that wiped out Hawaii's ground-nesting birds instead of controlling rats. But behind the mockery, scientists had been quietly working for decades on something brilliant. The snake they were releasing wasn't an invader. It was the rightful king returning to reclaim its throne, the eastern indigo snake. Known as the emperor of the forest, the eastern indigo is North America's longest native snake, reaching up to 9 feet. Its iridescent blue-black scales shimmer in sunlight, with reddish-orange coloring under its chin. But beauty isn't what makes it special, its diet is. The eastern indigo is ophiophagous. It eats other snakes. It's completely immune to pit viper venom, consuming rattlesnakes, cottonmouths, and copperheads with ease. It doesn't constrict prey. It simply pins them down and swallows them alive. It's the boss of the forest floor. But this boss had been dethroned by humans. The indigo's kingdom once stretched from South Carolina through Florida to Mississippi, thriving in ancient longleaf pine forests that covered 90 million acres. Today, 97% of those forests are gone, destroyed by logging and development. Indigos also depend on gopher tortoise burrows for shelter. As tortoises were hunted and displaced, the indigos vanished. During the Great Depression, people dug up tortoises for food and killed any snakes hiding inside. By 1978, the eastern indigo was listed as threatened, completely wiped out from Alabama and North Florida. The laughable plan wasn't about introducing a new snake. It was about restoring a native apex predator humans had already destroyed. For decades, conservation groups painstakingly bred indigos in captivity while restoring longleaf pine forests and protecting tortoise populations. Nature strikes back. While the world laughed, something unexpected happened in the swamp. Nature was already adapting. Researchers tracking a 13-foot, 52-pound male python named Loki found his massive body sprawled in the grass one December morning, his head completely chewed off. Trail cameras revealed the stunning culprit. A bobcat weighing barely 25 pounds had stalked, killed, and consumed a python more than twice its size. This discovery shocked wildlife experts. After 2 decades of pythons dominating as undisputed apex predators, one of Florida's own had turned the tables. Across Florida, more evidence emerged. Alligators ambushing smaller pythons, endangered Florida panthers taking down invaders. Were the native predators learning? Could they be communicating through behavior, passing knowledge to their young about the monster's weak spots? One biologist called it a score for the home team. But this adaptation is painfully slow. A single bobcat can't undo 2 decades of destruction. For every python taken down, thousands more hatch hidden and safe. The home team scored, but they're still losing. The Emperor returns. In autumn 2023, something extraordinary happened at the Apalachicola Bluffs and Ravines Preserve in North Florida. Trail cameras captured footage that changed everything. 2 wild-born eastern indigo snake hatchlings, offspring of previously released adults. For the first time in nearly half a century, eastern indigo snakes had successfully reproduced in the wild. When biologists confirmed one hatchling wasn't tagged, they knew it was born entirely without human intervention. The indigos weren't just surviving, they were thriving, hunting, and raising the next generation in their ancestral home. As 2024 and 2025 progressed, more snakes appeared. A strong 6-foot male glided confidently through the scrub. 19 other snakes from earlier releases were still thriving. The slow, hard work of restoring longleaf pine ecosystems and protecting gopher tortoises had paid off. The ecosystem wasn't just being restored, it was beginning to function again. The unanswered questions. Does this mean indigos will eliminate all pythons? No. The indigos are being released hundreds of miles north of the Everglades python stronghold. They aren't even in the same arena yet, but that's not the point. The real unexpected aftermath has 2 parts. First, nature itself is adapting. Bobcats and alligators are learning to fight back. Second, a conservation plan built on patience, science, and trusting nature's balance actually worked. For decades, the Everglades story was one of human failure. We failed to contain the snakes, failed to remove them, and watched high-tech solutions blow up in our faces. The real solution giving us a glimmer of hope wasn't robots or drones. It was a native snake and the slow, hard work of restoring the land. The pythons remain a crisis, the lungworm remains a plague. But Florida's swamps have revealed an aftermath nobody expected: resilience and hope. The final question haunts us. What happens when the eastern indigo's territory, spreading south, finally collides with the python's territory, spreading north? More importantly, what happens when the lungworm, also spreading north, infects the restored indigo snakes? Are we restoring a native species only to feed it to an invisible monster? The real aftermath isn't an ending. It's the beginning of a new three-way war: the python, the parasite, and the emperor. Are we witnessing a recovery, or just the next phase of the apocalypse? Only time will reveal the answer.